Hey everyone, Michael Pickens here. Welcome to the Libertarian Leadership Academy podcast. And normally we are interviewing candidates. I think everyone so far who has come on has been a candidate. This gentleman that is on today is a candidate recruiter, candidate trainer, candidate supporter. And I got to tell you a little story before I bring him on. When I first got into leadership in the Libertarian Party of California as Northern Vice Chair, I had no clue what I was doing, as most people when they get into leadership. And at that time, I believe Mark Hinkle was the national chair and Wes Benedict was the executive director. And these two gentlemen gave me a ton of support and a ton of information and a crash course on what I needed to do and what my role was as Northern Vice Chair. So without further ado, Wes Benedict, welcome to the show.
Michael, thanks for having me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're helping a ton of candidates in Texas through the Libertarian Booster PAC. Would you like to talk about, how you're recruiting candidates and how you're supporting the Libertarian Party in Texas right now?
Sure. And I'll just start by saying I think running for office is the best way to have a major impact for the Libertarian Party. And that's why I like to focus so much on recruiting candidates to run for office. And I've run for office myself a few times as well, but I also go out and train others on how to recruit candidates, and I encourage them to recruit candidates. And I really like to come on shows like yours and brag about why, how fun it is to recruit a lot of candidates and how they make a big impact so that others start doing it as well. Running for office is it can be a lot of work. It can be fun as well. But when people understand that we care about it, it makes a big impact. They're willing to go out and do it. They're willing to throw their hat in the ring and be a candidate. What I just worked on recently was recruiting a slate of statewide candidates in Texas. So we have elections next year. Texas is one of the deadline to file is different in every state. All 50 states is different. Texas is one of the earlier ones. So to run for office a year from now, you had to file your application and say you're going to be a candidate just now, which is about a year early. And so I think libertarians get the libertarian message out by being a candidate, getting all the publicity, going to events, going to forums and things. But also, it's important to have candidates on the ballot so that voters get in the habit of voting libertarian every election cycle. If you only run a libertarian, one in this little race and then nobody next year, and then 3 years from now, you run another one in a different part of the state. Well, all of those voters, including young voters who are 18 and 19 voting for the first time ever, get in the habit of selecting from whatever's on the ballot. If there's no libertarian, then they're voting Republican or Democrat. So in Texas, I like to have a whole lot of statewide candidates. So when they come in to vote, the first choice is U.S. Senate. There's a libertarian. Governor. There's a libertarian. Lieutenant governor. There's a libertarian on the ballot. Land commissioner. There's a libertarian. We don't have insurance commissioner. Railroad commissioner. So there's 9. I think it's 9. Maybe I got the number wrong. Now, in Texas, to be a candidate, anyone can't just do it. You have to raise and pay a filing fee, $5,000 for U.S. Senate and $3,150 for all those other races I named. So that's where my PAC came in, not just in calling people and asking them to run, but saying, hey, I'm going to help you raise the $3,750 so we can pay that filing fee. So the Libertarian Booster PAC raised and paid like $22,000 in filing fees. So that was 6 of those candidates or 5 of those candidates.
That is amazing. Thank you for doing that. And whenever I talk to candidates that are thinking about running, or they're running for their first time, I always tell them commit to running a minimum of 3 times, because the first time you go out there is a big learning experience. It's a big learning curve. But the second time you go out there, you're going to know a whole lot, and it's going to be a different ball game completely. I just had Larry on the show, Larry Sharp, and he's running for his 3rd time, and he knows so much more, and he's going to be so much more effective because of it. And then I had Ted Brown running for U.S. Senate in Texas, and this is 19th run, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I'll just tell you, I spent last night and the last few days on the phone with some of these new candidates and doing Google Meets and Zooms to help them fill out their campaign finance reports.
mhm.
And if it's their first time, it's difficult. But if they've run before, they mostly know how to do it already. And so and that's not the fun part of running for office, filling out campaign finance reports and
What?
paperwork. But I realize how hard it is and how important it is. So I tell them, you call me, especially the night before it's due. I'll stay up till midnight if we have to, and we will get it done. And we got all of them filed on time.
Fantastic. I always thought finance reports were the sexiest part of running for office.
Yeah, you're joking. I know.
I am joking.
They're pretty straightforward, but there's always these questions on there where you're like, I don't understand what the question is. You know, it's simple stuff where someone who's got the experience like me, I can walk them through it. And I've done this in multiple states, by the way. I helped 57 candidates in Alabama or Arkansas, I think 67 in Alabama and 17 in Mississippi. And a lot of it was holding their hands, filling out the campaign finance reports, because that's, if they don't do it, you get in trouble. You get fined. It's like getting a speeding ticket. And if you don't pay the ticket, then they start coming after you for bigger fees, bigger fines, and maybe eventually taking you to court or something. So the Libertarian Booster PAC, and what I encourage all state parties to do, recruit your candidates, but then be there to help them with all of this nitty gritty campaign finance and paperwork. A lot of candidates can figure out how to do the fun stuff, like going to campaign events and being in debates and being at forums and filling out all these surveys. You know, they can kind of figure that out, but the campaign finance stuff is a hassle. It's not fun. And I don't like doing it either. I just know how critical it is. So that's why I help so many with it.
Yeah, when we recruited 34 candidates in 2016, we had one person that was dedicated to helping candidates file with the PDC, which is similar, Public Disclosure Commission here in Washington. So let's move on to another topic really quick. And I want to bring up the book you wrote, Introduction to the Libertarian Party. And it's a really good book. It's very succinct and to the point with your chapters. But there's one chapter in particular that I want to touch on, and it's chapter 14, Turning Around the Dysfunctional Texas LP. Can you talk to us a little bit about what was going on there and how you turned it around? And just so everyone knows, Wes Benedict is also running for national chair, so this is very appropriate to the situation that the National Party is in right now. And I am planning on having the other national chair candidates on the show, so this isn't going to be, the Wes Benedict promotion, show or podcast. So go for it.
Yeah, sure. And so I served as the national executive director for 8 years. That's longer than anyone else has ever done it in the 54-year history of the party. I served as the executive director of the Libertarian Party of Texas for 4 years, and that's longer than anyone else has ever done that job in Texas as well. I originally was a local activist. I ran for office one time. I was a county chair, once a county chair in Georgia, another time a county chair here in Texas, in Travis County, Texas. And I was kind of content to do that. I had a full-time job and other stuff, and just wanted to be my little local self-activist, in working with the Austin, Texas Libertarians. But then suddenly we found that our candidates in our statewide races didn't get a high enough vote percentage. And so what happened in 2022, that vote percentage was too low. So the Libertarian Party of Texas lost its ballot access. And so now I'm just a county activist who doesn't care about the state, but now I'm like, oh wait, our whole state is going to lose ballot access. That's not good. So, but I still wasn't going to help, the state party. I don't know anything about them, and it's not my problem. Someone's going to take care of it. And so I didn't really worry about it. But as time went by, I kept hearing about infighting at the Libertarian Party of Texas. There were some factions. Huh?
Really? Infighting in the Libertarian Party?
Can you believe it? Really? Yeah. In a state party. Yeah. There's so few people, and yet they still find ways to fight with each other. And I don't even remember what the factions were. I don't think it was like ideological, like sometimes it is. I think it was just like this group versus some other group. But basically they all just got frustrated, and everybody was just kind of like, well, I'm not going to do anything. And so the ball was getting dropped. You could tell they're not going to get this petition drive done if somebody doesn't, and by chance, I had to run a small business and sold it around that time. So I had some money in the bank, and not a ton of money, but I had some money. So, and some time. And there's a guy, Pat Dixon, he served on the Libertarian National Committee. He also was the Texas chair, but at the time he wasn't. He was just a local activist like me. And he said, you know what, I'm going to serve on the ballot access committee. I'm going to chair it and try and make it happen. And he asked me if I'd get involved, and I start showing up, and it's like, oh my goodness, the party's like in such a mess. The treasurer can't tell us how much money we have. It's who knows if they're checking the mailbox and all that stuff. And we had to get 45,500 signatures, which is valid ones. And so it's like, that's a ton of signatures. Yeah. So really we had to get like 80,000 signatures. And I got involved. I could see it wasn't going to happen. I said, okay, I'll help as the volunteer coordinator, but I just started working on it a lot, helped with with the volunteer petitioners, went around the state training them, spending my own money doing that. And then I started helping hiring petitioners. We kind of learned, that volunteer thing doesn't work out quite as easily as everyone likes to think it would be.
Yeah.
And so we started raising money. Pat was raising money. The National Party gave some money to Texas, and we started hiring petitioners. In the end, we did get like 81,000 signatures, and I was hired as executive director shortly after that at a convention, and Pat Dixon became chair. And one of the first things I did was, I'm looking at our website, and there's a phone number at the bottom of the lptexas.org website. And I'm like, I'm going to call that number. I just got this funny feeling,
Yeah.
And I called the number, and I left a voicemail saying, hey, if you get this message, please call me. This is Wes, the executive director. Y'all know me. I'm just curious who checks the voicemail. And of course, no call back. No, I didn't. I also, during that petition drive, I emailed all our county chairs. We had a website with all these county chairs. I'm like, oh, great. We'll just get each county to get 1,000 signatures. No problem. I send an email. I was using an AOL account at the time. AOL America Online froze my email because there were so many bad emails. They're like, okay, you're spamming to junk. And so, so it was like penalized for a day or two, or I forget what it was. And I'm like, oh my goodness. It's like, I thought we had all these county chairs. I thought we had an organization. There's really nothing. It's over a third. I think it was over a third of them were bad email addresses. And eventually I did get access to that voicemail, and I listened to the messages, and it only went back 6 months, but like there were 6 months of messages. It was stuff like, hi, I'm a reporter from so-and-so. We want to talk to your such and such candidate. Or, hi, I want to run for office. My name is so-and-so. I'm in Dallas. And all kinds of messages. I don't think it had been checked for 2 years. And so, and meanwhile, if you ask libertarians, what's our problem? Well, the media doesn't give us enough coverage. We don't raise enough money. Our candidates, we don't have enough candidates. I'm like, man, if you're not checking your voicemail, and who knows what emails weren't checked,
Yeah. So that
you got to have basic customer service. Yeah.
Yeah. So that reminds me of, the thought of running paper candidates. And my opinion on running a paper candidate is that you have to do like two things. One is make sure you have a website that works. And then two is respond to any inquiries or volunteers or media or anything that's asking questions. Because the worst thing that we can have as candidates is a newspaper article where the Republican gave this answer, the Democrat gave this answer, and the Libertarian did not respond. How would people vote for us if we're not even responding to the media on the
Right.
issues?
It's important to respond. And what I tell candidates I recruit is, don't worry too much about saying the wrong thing and don't get too complicated. Keep it simple. You're a
Yep.
libertarian. You want smaller government. You want lower taxes. You want individual liberty and civil liberties, and you're against that war or whatever. You don't have to say, they can only print like 8 words about you. So you want to just say some simple things. The other thing I tell them is just call me or email me if you have something coming up, because I can coach you through it. I used to be scared. I still don't really love doing public speaking and things like that. I used to get super nervous like 20 years ago. And like in college,
Sure.
it was like the most horrifying thing in the world was speaking in front of a group. Now I've done it so much, I don't care. It's very easy for me now. And actually running for Austin City Council kind of broke me of that, because I went to like 30 events and I was nervous the first 3 or 4, and then I'm like, okay, I know how this is going to go. And it just got easier and easier. Yeah.
And that's great. I'd love to delve a little more into that, right? Because the same thing here, when I first started doing public speaking and coaching or podcasts or whatever, I'd start sweating. My t-shirt would be soaked. I was so nervous doing it. But because I kept doing it, it got easier and easier. And now it's a piece of cake. I can go talk in front of a crowd or hop on a podcast or answer someone's questions, and it's no big deal. And you have to be able to just take those first steps and believe in yourself and believe in the process, that it's going to get easier.
Exactly. And that happens to everyone. And that is a good reason to run a few times. But even the first time I ran, it's like I was nervous at the very first event, but I was more nervous than the average person. I know everyone says they're kind of nervous to do that, but not everyone is as nervous. I was more like on the very nervous side of a person. And I got over all that. And it happened quick, because you go to some different events and they ask the same questions at every single thing. It's usually something simple. What are you going to do about the war in Iraq, or what's your view on the budget, or or immigration? And they only give you like 3 minutes, and sometimes it's only like 1 minute per candidate to answer a question. And so if you've made a website and you've put like 3 or 4 issues there with a sentence or 2 about each, you can just print out your issues page and just say whatever's on your page, and you've got it done. And actually, that's a good thing. If you have just a few points where you're ready to focus on those, that helps you, no matter what the question is, get the points that you think are most important out there. They may ask, how are you going to raise more money for the government so we can do more great things? And you're like, well, actually, my first bullet point is to lower spending, and lower taxes. And so, if you have that in writing, you can get back to that. But I've helped a lot of candidates, and if you keep it, you let them know, look, we're pulling for you. We know you're not a polished professional politician that's been doing this for 20 years. We want you to go out and try. And I'll tell you, even when reporters call our candidates, and I know they've called some that I was like, oh boy, that guy's not going to be very good. They often put decent stuff in the paper, because they have to write a decent story, and they're not going to say, oh, so-and-so is kind of like a nerdy, whatever, that just doesn't go well in their paper anyway. So they'll say a lot about the Republican and Democrat, and they'll say, well, the Libertarian wants to legalize marijuana and lower taxes, and it's against the war or whatever. It's like they often make us feel better than we actually are. So you don't have to be so scared. If you're an elected politician, then you have to be scared. They're going to look for every little bad thing you do and mock you. But wait, you don't have to worry about that until you're elected.
Yeah, absolutely. But to get elected, you have to get yourself out there.
Yeah.
And sometimes it does take multiple times running for office, maybe running for smaller offices. So you're running for national chair. What made you decide that now is the time to run for this position? It's a big position, obviously. So
yeah, I'm worried kind of like when I decided to help with the petition drive and work for the Libertarian Party of Texas, I'm worried that the national party is just shrinking and becoming less and less effective. And when that happens, the state affiliates start getting smaller and less effective. They raise less money. They run fewer candidates. So I served as executive director. That means I was a full-time staff person for the party. When in our headquarters, it was in Washington, D.C. for a while, then in Alexandria, Virginia. We had a staff of up to 14 when I left in 2018. And we had a regular newsletter that went out. We would send press releases. We'd get some news media, and I would always talk about running for office, and we'd do a lot of reports and posts about, here's this candidate who ran for mayor and won, here's this candidate who ran for this and won. And it just looked like we had a reasonable, good functioning organization. And when I first joined, there was like 5 or 6 of us on staff. And so as a staff member, I did pretty much every role in there. I did whatever needed to be done, but I did fundraising. I helped with the website. I helped fix database problems, or maybe the design of our membership thing was messed up, and I would help fix that up. I would help get state chairs motivated and going on stuff if they were from a state that wasn't doing well. I would do media interviews, go speak at state conventions and things. And so in graphic design, and I'd write fundraising letters. I sent a lot of fundraising letters. Everybody, like to complain about those. Some people liked them, some like to complain, but it's like, okay, yeah, we're out. We're coming out there to get you. We're letting you know we're here.
But how much money did you guys raise back then?
Well, yeah, we were raising over a couple $1 million a year.
Like 2 million?
Yeah. I forget the exact numbers. Sometimes I think the lowest was closer to 1 million or 1.1 million, but we raised well over 2 million a time or two. And it was consistently over 1.5 million many years. I need to double check those exact figures, but let's just say it was going well. We had a building that was getting paid off. It was an office, it wasn't the most important thing in the world, but the party decided to go with that. We raised money for it. And we had about 6 of us. When we had 14 employees, there's about 6 of us that worked in there full time. So we could talk to each other throughout the day. Hey, how do you do this? How do you do this? Or you'd overhear a phone conversation, and I'd be like, oh, hey, Robert, I can help that guy in North Carolina, whatever the case. I want to run for chair. Important. Yeah. Well, and so now they're down to a small handful, and I think most of them are part-time. And I don't know the current staff very well. They may be fine. They may be fine at operations, but I don't think they've run for office or been a state chair or state executive director. And so they don't really know what needs to be done to grow the party and how to serve the state affiliates. And so I can help them with, I will work with any staff that's good. You never want to get rid of anyone that's good, and they may all be good, but not necessarily know where to focus. The LNC is also a problem. They don't know where to focus. And if you have an LNC, I used to sometimes call them the bad idea factory, and that's probably bothered some of them. It's like, you want to have some good ideas, you want to have some new ideas, but if they're just throwing out, let's do this, it's too much. You can't focus, you can't get things done. And so part of my role as executive director would say, hey, that might be an okay idea, but we have 8 ideas. Let's pick 2. And by the way, we need to finish these other 2 also. So keep in mind, we got to finish these 2, and then we can start these 2. Is that okay? Often they'd be okay with that. As chair, I can help keep the LNC under control respectfully, and also help work with the staff to make sure that they're doing the most important projects that need to get done that'll make us more effective, more efficient in the next year or 2. So I've got the most experience at the national level, the national headquarters office. I worked for 4 different national chairs. I worked for Bill Redpath, for Mark Hinkle, for Jeff Neal, and for Nicholas Sarwark. And the party was quite effective. It wasn't perfect, and I made mistakes, and I've had some enemies out there and some complaints some of them are valid. Some things I'd have done differently, but I did pretty well. The party was, I think people had confidence that the party was solid and doing well. And I wanted to get back to that. So I'm going to run for chair. I want to fix it back up. And if someone else if someone else wins, there's Evan McMahon's running from Indiana. He's a very experienced Indiana chair, been around a while. I'll support him if he wins. I just think that I've got the most experience to help make the national organization functional.
Yeah. When I became chair in Washington State, I just focused on the basics of what a political party should be doing, right? Recruiting candidates, raising money, getting our message out there, right? And that's what a political party should be doing. So really quick, I do want to touch on the elephant in the room that I've seen on some posts about your involvement with the RFK campaign.
Yeah, sure.
We the People. So if you'd like to touch on that.
Okay. Yeah. And I'll give a little background on it. Leading up to the convention in Washington, D.C. in 2024, there were some chat groups set up and for people who were likely to be delegates. And I would occasionally go on there and see what people were saying. And this one guy kept going on trying to promote Kennedy, and everybody would just pile on super negative. They just say, "Oh, Kennedy sucks. He's not a libertarian. He's a hardcore Democrat. He's a environmentalist, extremist, and a vaccine wacko, or anti-vaccine wacko." And they would just trash talk him. And it was like 98-2, 99-1 was all negative. And I was like, and I was okay with that because I didn't want Kennedy to be the libertarian nominee either, and I wanted to have a real libertarian candidate. But I also remember in Texas, there were some independents that ran for governor a couple of times. Kinky Friedman was one. He was a semi-famous Texas musician, not super known nationwide, but somewhat known in Texas, especially in the Austin area. And there was a Carol Keaton Strayhorn, an independent for governor. And these two were running for governor. And I was nice to them, but I personally recruited a libertarian candidate for governor that same year. And they sometimes their campaigns would say, "Why don't y'all drop out?" or whatever. I'm like, you know what? Don't worry about us. We're going to get a small percent, but we want to run anyway. But I appreciate what you're doing. Y'all are against the two parties. I like that. You're not a Republican or Democrat. And in the end, libertarians got a huge vote percentage on everything but governor, because all these independents were out. And later, Kinky Friedman endorsed a future libertarian candidate for governor. So I posted on there, "Hey, y'all quit trash talking them so much. I'm going to hurry because I know we're short on time."
Sure. Go ahead.
And I posted on my Facebook thing, "Hey, let's not have Kennedy, but let's not be disrespectful. We might want to work with some of their folks later. He's running as an independent. Some of them independents might vote for our other candidates."
Oh, yeah. Yep.
The Kennedy campaign reached out to me a little while after and said, "Hey, would you serve as our Texas state director?" And I said, maybe, but not until after the national convention. And at the time, the national party had invited Trump and Kennedy, and this is really not looking good. We need to have libertarian candidates, but Kennedy seemed like just a sideshow. It seemed like Trump was the big bad deal. And it's like everyone's trash talking Kennedy, and he got one vote for the nomination from Texas. It wasn't me. And so, if I was pushing him at the convention, I would have gotten at least a handful of votes for Kennedy. So that was over. I was not a fan of the chair who was reelected. And I'm kind of like, man, this libertarian party, it might just be falling apart. I don't know. I think I'm gonna go work on that independent campaign for Kennedy for a little while. And so I did that. I was the Texas state director. I learned a lot about running a much bigger campaign for president. And but when he dropped out and said he's going to be a Republican and work for Trump, some of them asked me to go and do that. I'm like, nah, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So, and I voted for Chase Oliver. I donated to his campaign $600, voted for him at the national convention, and voted for him on election day in November. But it's a reasonable complaint. I complain when people help anyone else in the libertarian. It's a legitimate concern for me running for national chair.
I think you have a good reason why I stepped out when certain people took over the party and it was pretty much a shit show. And, the pieces are being picked up right now currently. And I don't blame you one bit. Like, I stepped out, and I did promote Kennedy here, in Washington State at the local level. He was still on the ballot when it came to voting time. But I was a promoter of his, so I'm a big fan of what he's doing currently, and I want to make America healthy, right? Not big on mandates, but all good. So
Yeah.
makes sense what you did.
He had a lot of libertarians on his team, and when he was campaigning, his message was surprisingly not so bad. From my point of view, I'm like, wow, he's saying some decent stuff.
Yeah.
And this, so he's not a libertarian. I understand that, and I want real hardcore libertarians out there getting the libertarian message out there. And so that's my 99% focus.
Yeah, well, I know you've recruited and trained hundreds of libertarian candidates and helped tons of party leaders from around the country. So I appreciate you stepping up and running for national chair. I appreciate everything you're doing with the Libertarian Booster PAC, or everything you've done, because you've been operating that for years as well, supporting candidates. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we go ahead and sign off?
I just thank you for being an activist and for having me on your show. And I encourage other folks out there, if you're interested in the Libertarian Party, go to lp.org or find your state affiliate. Find a candidate in a campaign to help, and you can learn how to be a good activist yourself.
Yep, and I'm going to promote your book right now, so you don't have to. Go to libertarianboosterpack.org. His book is $10, and it's an introduction to the Libertarian Party. It's very succinct. I think it's like 120 pages, so it's a quick read, and it's a lot of good information. So, all right, Wes, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.